Welcome to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. Are you trying to master the game of life without success? There are secrets and strategies to living your best life. We'll share some of them with you on today's show. Take advantage of this series to become an expert at relationships. All relationships. It's time to live the life that you deserve to live. Now, here's your host, Sandra Reish.
Hello there, and welcome back to Straight Talk. So I wonder how many times this week you thought about the word happiness. How many times this week did you think, I wish I was happier, or I want my kids to be happy, or why am I not happier? Think about it. We search for this all the time. And a few months ago, I had the great honor of having Dr. Christine Carter on Straight Talk. And all of you wrote to me and told me how much you enjoyed that show. She is a brilliant woman who exemplifies what her research is on, which is happiness. Now, before I go into her bio, I really wanted her back because the time just ran when she was here last time. But I also wanted to talk about children because everywhere I go, people are always asking me about children when I give talks, when I go into schools, everywhere, and about the concept of happiness. And I often talk about happiness not necessarily being correlated with accomplishment, and people sort of gasp, but rather correlated with resilience. And guess what? Dr. Carter's work shows that. So we're going to get all into that. So let me tell you about her. She's an awesome, fascinating woman on so many different levels. She's mother of 3, if I have this right.
Actually, 4.
Oh, 4. Oh, my goodness. She's got 4 children. She's very open in her own struggle of being overly busy and how that was not linked with happiness. She is a sociologist and a senior fellow at UC Berkeley's Greater Good Science Center, and she's the author of the book, The Sweet Spot, which everyone who listened to the last show went out and got. It's called The Sweet Spot, How to Find Your Groove at Home and Work. I cannot recommend it enough. And another book called Raising Happiness about children and how we can get our children to feel the best possible. I mean, just to rave about her a bit, I feel, we haven't met, but I feel she's my personal friend in my own mind. And so I'm very proud of her. She's been quoted or featured in like every newspaper, in like, you name it, she's been there. She's been on Oprah, Dr. Oz show, the Today Show. I just watched a clip from a PBS special. Oh my God, we have to talk about that. Very interesting. ABC World News with Diane Sawyer, BBC Radio, and I'm sure the list is much more than that. She writes a blog which is featured and syndicated on Huffington Post, Psychology Today, Positive.com, Medium.com, and several other websites. I mean, your credentials are extraordinary. I love credentials, but what really speaks to me about you is your spirit. So welcome back, Dr. Carter. I'm so happy to get to chat with you again.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me back. I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, talk about happy. This makes me happy. And so it does. Too. It makes me really happy to talk with you. And, it's funny, I'll go right into it because I was looking at some of your work and your happiness is contagious. And I think your research shows that happiness has a contagion effect. So let's talk about that. What's that all about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a misunderstanding to think of us as being separate from one another. We're all really connected. Our nervous systems are really connected. So when, and through our emotions mostly, right? So if somebody near you is feeling really anxious, we are highly likely to pick up on that and start to feel a little bit anxious ourselves. Now, different people are more contagious than others. There is a lot of really interesting research. Do you want me to tell you about some of it around emotional contagion?
Yes.
My favorite studies, I think about these all the time, are they're done with college freshmen who are put with total strangers as roommates. And their first day on campus, they bring them into the lab, and both roommates, and they measure their emotional response to a video clip. And they are completely different people who don't know each other at all, and they respond totally differently to the video clips emotionally. And they do this, they're measuring micro expressions in their face and they're actually physiologically measuring the emotions. They're not just asking them how they felt. Wow. And then 6 weeks later, they bring them both back in, and separately they have them watch new video clips. And guess what? They respond the same to the video clips. So the people that we live with tend to really entrain us. We start to respond in emotionally really similar ways. Now, that's not exactly the same as emotional contagion, which would be like I feel happy and or I laugh, and then you hear me laugh and a little part of your brain thinks that it is you that is laughing. But so much of our emotions become habitual and are kind of learned behaviors. And the people around us, both in the short term, right, in the immediate term, dictate our emotions, and also in the longer term.
Well, what you just mentioned, I have to highlight it. Let me stay on that for a moment, because as my work, I work with a lot of depression and anxiety, and I often talk about the fact that if a spouse is depressed, the depression is going to seep into the whole household. So that study really speaks to that. And I often tell people that they say, well, is it my business? That is your business. How much ice cream your husband has, maybe not, but maybe not. Maybe that's not your business. But depression, that study on the freshman really speaks to the fact that that's going to affect the whole household. Is that right?
Right. Absolutely. And typically it's the most powerful emotion that tends to dictate how other people feel. So it's not the most powerful person. It's the strongest emotion typically is what. So I work a lot. I have 4 teenagers, and I work a lot with families that have teenagers. And as you know, teenagers have very strong emotions. So it's an interesting thing to be aware of and to sort of guard yourself against, and then to attribute the emotion properly. So I've gone back to sort of, when my kids were really little and I was anxious. I come from a long line of very anxious people on both sides of my family. And
adaptive people.
Adaptive people. Yeah. And so when I would notice that my children, when they were toddlers, were misbehaving and I was anxious, one of my daughters, Molly, who's now in 7th grade, but she's very, very sensitive, and she would always pick up on it the most. And so I can remember reading about this college student study and turning around in the car to her and saying, oh, no, you're not anxious. Mommy's really anxious right now. This is my worry. Mommy's really worried right now. I'm going to take care of it, but you don't have to worry, right? And it was like the light bulb went off for her. Like she realized, she was actually not worried about anything. She was just picking up on my thing. And as a toddler, right, we sort of learned to have this language. And now the reverse is happening. She's 13 and she'll be like freaking out about something social at school, and I'll start to feel bad. And she'll say, oh, Mom, this is just my middle school stuff.
No way. She says that?
So awesome. Yeah. I mean, she's very exceptional. The other kids never really were quite that on it, but she does, because we've been talking about it for 10 years like this,
So, I mean, that does bring up a question about teenagers, and I'm getting close with my kids too. So when you say the strongest emotion takes the lead in the house, so if many parents come talk to me about their teenagers and they tell me they tell me what's coming up for me, that's not going to be easy with them. And I know a lot of people listening right now, I know who you are listening, about the mood swings of your teenagers. So what you're saying is, I guess it's very important not to catch their emotions. It's like the hot potato that I talk about. Don't catch the hot potato.
Yeah. Well, teenagers especially throw that hot potato all the time. They want to externalize their anxiety and anger and everything on their parents. So yeah, it's taking, I think about it as sort of taking the wind out of their sails, right? So they can throw the hot potato, and if you ignore it or leave the room or whatever, it just doesn't really go anywhere. But I also think with these really strong emotions, we don't want to resist them, and we want to teach them not to resist them, because that's what makes them so big. So if they're really angry, to be like, I need you to calm down, right? It just doesn't work.
Right.
So to just say, I can see that you're really angry right now, and here's where I am. I'm about to leave, I'm walking out the door right now. I am not going to engage. And once again, when I was really little, I mean, when my kids were really little, I used the bathroom as my escape. I like when I was sort of starting to lose it emotionally, it was becoming too contagious. I'd be like, "Mommy needs to go to the bathroom right now," and I would just lock myself in the bathroom for a few minutes while I could breathe and get some space. And I do it now too, when it's like all starting to explode around me. I'll say, "You know what? Just a minute. I've needed to go to the bathroom all day." And I will just leave.
Wow.
They let you go, right? And it's totally true. I'm not lying. I've needed to go and collect myself.
Right.
And I just kind of go and sit and breathe and come back. And calm is an extremely powerful emotion as well, right? Like, so long as you're really sitting in it, it can be contagious as well.
Okay, so, we sort of fell upon this, but I do think a lot of people ask about this. So what you're saying is you take a time out. So part of it, if it's hysterical, you don't engage, you take a time out. What happens when the kids start using the victim card? Like, my life is awful, it's all horrible, and they're hysterical. You come back out of the bathroom, they're still hysterical. What would you do? What would you recommend in that situation?
Well, I think the first thing is to always validate what they're feeling, right? Like as parents, our natural, maybe it's just me, but my natural instinct anyway, is to be like, your life is not horrible.
Right.
Look at this beautiful everything.
Yeah.
Look at, I just made you dinner.
Yeah.
Everything is so fabulous, right? Like I will.
Me too.
That
doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work at all. It doesn't work at all.
Yeah, because it hits us because we're giving our kids so much and they're saying their life is awful. So we're kind of getting almost defensive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or it's like, I don't want to see you in pain.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to try and help you see what you could feel grateful for instead. Right. I'm going to distract you from whatever. So no, that's what not to do. The instinctual thing. Okay, so where this is particularly hard is when girls have body image issues. Yes. I was just working with somebody on this, and they're like, she's falling apart. She's in tears. She says, "I'm so fat," and she's not fat, right? Like, and you're telling me to validate her feelings? Yeah, not necessarily her judgment about things, but to validate her feelings.
So not you are fat, but I understand you feel fat. You feel fat.
Not even that, really. I mean, yeah, she feels fat, but it's to like say, I can see that you're in so much pain right now. Okay. And what do you feel ashamed? Do you feel? And she came back really strongly with, "I'm really trying to love my body because I know that it's supposed to be I'm supposed to be body positive." And she had all this language from school around it, but really, what I feel is hate. I just hate my body.
Wow.
And then they were able to have a really nice conversation around how hard it is to see your body changing so rapidly.
Right.
And she just had a big growth spurt, and she really looked different, and she got to feel sad about not having a little kid body anymore, and confused about what that means, and fearful about having a woman's body. And so this is the life of teenagers, right? Like, if they come to you and they're seeming irrational, they may actually be irrational, but the feelings are very real. And so to just go straight for the feelings and not necessarily why they're feeling that way, at first, because it won't be logical necessarily.
Right. Right. And, it's quite challenging for parents because, this comes up in my practice all the time because we want to validate feelings, but we certainly don't want to reinforce when the emotional regulation is literally out of control. Like, it's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to break a window. Right. Or scream your head off and saying how horrible your life is. Like, I can understand you're feeling that things aren't going so well, or maybe you're feeling a little scared, but you can't scream to this extent. And that is the challenge, is between validation and boundaries. And there's a magic in that. There's a magic there.
Yeah. And drawing a really bright line for kids of any age, right? Some adults need this too, between, all feelings are okay. All behavior isn't.
Right.
Right. And expression of emotion is a behavior. right? So helping them understand everything that you're feeling is fine. All behavior is not necessarily fine.
Yes,
and we
well
need
said.
we need to figure out what that is. So this is why people are often shocked to hear that I will leave the scene of a crime all the time. Do you know what I mean? Like when it's all out of control.
Me too.
Because it's like, I can see that you're in tremendous pain. You're very frustrated. You're so annoyed by me. I can see my piece in this, but you can't hear anything right now.
Right.
So when you're behaving better, I will come back and we will talk about it.
I'm so glad you're saying that, and you've really expressed it very succinctly, because I think what happens for a lot of parents is that they want their kids to be happy so badly, we all do, that they don't leave the scene of the crime. And there are collateral benefits for the teenager or child if you stay. And so they've learned a little trick. You know, I go hysterical, I get attention, a primary reinforcer. So I think it's wonderful that you leave the scene of the crime, as you say, because otherwise I would imagine you're the happiness expert, but I would imagine we're slowly inching into the fact that validation is part of, you know, us feeling secure in the world, but so are boundaries. We need limits. It's not anything goes. Does that fit with happiness research? Because I know it fits with my stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And particularly with kids, right? Kids don't feel safe and secure when parents don't provide boundaries.
Oh, you need to say that again, Dr. Carter.
Kids don't feel safe or secure when parents don't hold the line, when they don't provide very clear, very consistent boundaries. Okay. And it is their job to push those boundaries, and it is your job to hold them so that they can be happy.
Brilliance. That's such a great line. It's a perfect segue. We'll be right back with Straight Talk with Sandra Reish.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Change your life forever with the latest cutting-edge products for home study treatment for anxiety, featuring the clinical director of the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression and host of Straight Talk, Sandra Reish. Sandra is joined by top therapist Georgia Dow in this revolutionary anxiety videos therapy series. Thousands of people have benefited from this scientifically proven treatment approach. Isn't it time you chose yourself? Visit anxiety-videos.com right now. That's anxiety-videos.com and change your life forever.
Join the therapist who is affectionately known as the Couple Whisperer, Sandra Reish, on her famous couple retreats and change your life forever. Sandra offers couple retreats in beautiful locations several times a year that can radically change your love life. Couples describe her retreats as life-changing. Regain that loving feeling, bring your intimacy to a new level, and rediscover excitement and joy. Find out more at helpforanxietydepression.com or call 514-796-4357. We all want love and safety. Now you can have it. Call 514-796-4357 or helpforanxietydepression.com.
Spa Munari is a full-service wellness day spa located at the heart of West Island, Quebec. Submerge yourself in beauty with one of our many treatments, specially catered to your needs. We offer facials, manicures, pedicures, hair removal, massages, body treatments, and so much more. Enjoy our ultimate relaxation experience with our spa packages. We offer a men's menu as well. Call us today to book your next appointment at 514-695-5040 or visit us on the web at spamunari.com. That's 514-695-5040 or spamunari.com.
A fresh look at today's health. Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. To connect with the program today, please call 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email to info@helpforanxietydepression.com. Now, back to Straight Talk. Here's Sandra Reish.
Having a great time talking with Dr. Carter, even on the break. We left off with a statement that so many parents listen to the show, and so many parents are struggling with this, I can't tell you, about the concept of wanting to be the good guy with your kids and their friend. And I'm often in the office, I'm notorious for saying there have to be boundaries for your kids to feel secure. The anxiety specialist, anxiety shows up when there's no boundaries. And I've got, the brilliant, famous Dr. Christine Carter here with me. Well, she's really something. And the author of The Sweet Spot, a book you must read. I couldn't put it down, honestly. And I want to go back to it, quite frankly, because we'll talk about how it's so easy to get caught up in the rat race, so to speak. We'll get to that. But we were talking about boundaries make kids feel secure. So, Dr. Carter, maybe we can review, why do boundaries make people feel secure?
Well, particularly for kids, if you can sort of put yourself in the shoes of a child really of any age, one thing we know that's happening is that they're changing really, really rapidly, right? Their brain is changing. They're learning new things. Everything is new and novel to kids. And this is particularly true for younger kids, but also for adolescents in terms of their brains. It's a real time of brain remodeling. And that is enough instability for any organism to be able to handle, right? Yeah. So what they need in order to continue to learn and grow so incredibly rapidly is a stable platform to launch from. And they need their parents to create that for them, right? They need to know that their parents are keeping an eye on their safety so that they can take risks and go out there and be daring. That's why kids are so challenging to us, right? They're going to constantly test to make sure that we're going to hold the boundaries, that we're going to keep them safe in whatever realm, not just physically, but also psychologically, and that they need this holding space for us. And it's unfortunate, but I mean, I don't know what you're seeing in your practice, but what I'm seeing in my parent coaching practice is that parents are really having a hard time doing this these days. They want their children to be happy, of course, and so they think that means that their children always need to be happy with everything that they do. And so they say yes when they should say no, and they're really afraid to enforce the rules so that because they don't want their kids to be mad at them.
It's my practice, and my way of approaching my practice is so similar to you. I've told you I feel like you're a soul sister to me because we think alike. And what I see is that, and what you're saying really is that unconsciously kids are begging for boundaries. They actually want them because, as you called it, it's the holding space. It creates security. I equate it to the stop signs on the street. If there were no stop signs, we wouldn't feel safe. Even though we're not happy when we get a ticket, we need the police to be there. We're grateful they're there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So another thing that you say I noticed when I was, preparing for today, as I go around town and talk places, I talk to parents a lot, and I say that the biggest gift you can give your child is non-happiness. It's actually resiliency. And I noticed today when I was doing some research just to stay up to date on all the exciting things you're doing, I noticed that you say the same thing. So resiliency you feel is very important. Can you say a few words on that?
Well, I think it's really, it depends on how we're talking about resiliency, and I'm really interested in hearing more about what caught your eye in that. But I will just say really quickly that if we can't take risks, right? If we're not resilient, we can't take risks, and if we can't take risks and risk falling down sometimes, then we can never really grow. It keeps us completely stuck in the lives that we're already leading. So this is really important for both adults and for kids.
Well, I saw you on an interview, that's where it was, and you were talking about the fact that kids do better when they're happy, but yet resiliency is a necessary ingredient to being happy, because it's exactly what you said, is that I have to be able to cope through difficult times to know that I can get to good times, as opposed to everything's going to be smooth sailing, which is not a correct setup of life.
Right. Yeah. Because no matter who we are and what circumstances we're born into, life is very difficult. It involves challenge. A life well lived involves lots of challenge and lots of difficulty. We're always pushing ourselves to the edge, right? That's where fulfillment and meaning comes from. So comfort is not the goal. right? So, and we forget that. We forget that with ourselves. We forget that with our kids. We just try and protect them from all forms of discomfort, disappointment, difficulty, and basically we're protecting them from happiness when we do that.
I can't believe you just said that because, again, the soul sister thing, sorry. I hope that's okay. But, I call that warm bath water. I say even when you go get a therapist or a coach, you don't want warm bath water. You want stretch. You want to be out of the comfort zone. And that is true. That is how life is. So creating an environment of warm bath water or, complete comfort, as you say, we're on the same page. It's really not preparing someone for life. Life is filled with challenges. So I really love the work that you're doing. Now, this does bring us to another point, which again, the schools are asking me all the time is there is a lot of schoolwork. You were talking on the break about, we just got cut off on that concept of your kids in the school year. There's a lot of work these days in schools. Now kids need to do their work. So I'm being asked often by parents and administrators, well, what are we to do? We want them to do well in life, but yet there's a lot of research showing that we're overburdening children and they're not really getting that much of a childhood. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely true. And you can look at the research in a lot of different ways and see that, really structured lives and having a lot of enrichment activities can really reduce risk in certain populations of kids, and it can increase risk in others. And so, it reduces risk of, pregnancy and alcohol and drug abuse, for example, in teenagers who don't have options and would otherwise be unsupervised and have nothing else to do. But so, that said, in general, I think that kids have lost a lot of their childhood of just being able to go outside and play and learn through play, grow through play, and learn to cope with things like boredom, right? To make up their own games and their own rules to their own games and work out their own things that, the kids today are used to having two things. One, constant direction, which is, not like go for a run necessarily or go get some exercise, but do this drill and then do this drill and then practice this specific thing, which is great at honing skills. It's not great, though, honing specific athletic skills. It's not great at honing the ability to direct your own behavior and regulate your own activity and emotions. And then they have constant structure and direction, external motivation. And then they have constant stimulation, which is also an external form of motivation in the sense that in terms of the way it affects the reward system in their brain. So they don't just we used to just wander around the neighborhood looking for other kids, right? Figuring out who was home or who was outside or whatever. These kids sit and play video games and play on the iPad and all their devices, and they're never bored. They're constantly stimulated. But that creates a big psychological hole in their systems when they can't tolerate any sort of, suddenly calm is uncomfortable.
So I guess it's, to be clear that when your child is saying they're bored, handing them the phone, handing them the iPad, as many parents listening fall into that habit because every other parent is doing it, is not what you would recommend.
No, I don't, no. I have enforced a very sort of old-fashioned childhood on my kids in a weird sort of way. So when I was growing up, we got 1/2 an hour of television per day.
Yeah.
I watched The Brady Bunch. Yeah. Right? So my kids get 1/2 an hour of screen time per day over the summer. Yep. They think I am evil. Yeah. But they are very self-entertaining. And they've just at this point thrown the towel in. They know I'm going to enforce it. They know. So they're like, okay. One of my teenagers is already off. She's in the backcountry for 3 full weeks. She does not have her phone. This has fully backfired on me as a mother because I'm like, what do you mean I'm not going to be able to talk to you for 3 weeks? I'm like, that's horrible. Oh, I'm so sad.
Yeah, that must be hard.
No, well, yes, it's hard, but that's not a reason. It's hard for me. Yeah. But it's not a reason to keep her from doing it, right? Right. But it has, she will be device free for 3 weeks, which is a radical thing to have happen for a 16-year-old girl. 15.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's really, really good. And, I guess that your kids, and parents ask me this all the time, I guess your kids got used to it because, parents say to me, but what will you say when your kids say, well, all the other kids have phones and all the other kids have the iPad? I personally say, that's nice. That's not how it works here. Is that how you handle it?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, they push back regularly, right? Like my kids have grown up with having different rules, and it still doesn't really feel good to them. They're still not happy about it.
Right.
And I think because I expect that, it's not like they've kind of laid down and don't push back, and it's not like they don't break the rules, right? Then I don't, you know what I mean? We have a lot, we're still constantly having a lot of heated discussions about it. But in the end, it's my phone. Yeah. I pay for it.
Yeah.
Right? I get to know the passwords. I get to look at who you're following on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I get that you don't like it and it feels like a violation of privacy. I'm never going to do it not in front of you, right? Like we have sort of boundaries, but I'm going to always have your passwords. I'm going to look through your texts. So you should tell your friends, your mom reads your texts.
Oh,
right?
I love how open you are about that. So you tell them that. You tell them, listen, I have your passwords. I'm going to check your texts.
I'm going to do it in front of you.
Yeah.
Right? Because then they can. So I'm like, so we have the mom rule. Your friends should know about the mom rule too. If they want to, if you want to push the boundaries in terms of trying on talking about sexuality or trying out swearing or things that I get it. Normal teenagers do. You want to talk about these things with your friends and you don't want your mom to be involved in it because you're trying to figure out how to talk about these things.
Right.
Okay. Text is not private. Neither is Instagram. Snapchat, I get that it goes away, but I'm still looking at your story. Right. Yeah. So that leaves you with email. I don't read their email. That's our agreement. If you want to have a private conversation with one of your friends, that's fine. Do it over email. Even though it's always there, you can't get rid of it. I'm not saying it's okay to sell drugs or something on an email, right?
But you're less worried about the email because it's not a public forum. Is that right?
Yeah, and also because I want to provide safer forums for them to have private conversations.
Right.
So my kids very quickly adapted to moving to FaceTime, right?
Yeah.
So they still are using their phones to be constantly connected to their friends, but they do it in this forum that it doesn't have this, actually, the funny thing about FaceTime is they are also really not supposed to be doing it in their room with the door closed. So if they want to do that, they have to have a phone conversation. But I let the FaceTime thing go.
Okay.
Sometimes. You know what I mean? I want them to be able to have private conversations. And okay, so here's the feedback ultimately that I get. At least one of the kids every other weekend will say, I think we need to have a technology-free weekend. And I'll say, great, why? Because I'm feeling a little addicted, and it's just so much easier to do when we all do it together, right? You can't have one teenager on their phone and the other's not.
Right.
We have to all do it together. So this is hardest for my husband and I. To be like, okay, so can we just do Sunday? A big negotiation starts happening. Right?
Really?
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, because it's okay, well, I wasn't really planning on that. So,
yeah.
Okay,
no,
all right,
we're
doing it on Sunday. We're.
But you must be pleased that they come to you and say they want a technology-free weekend. I mean, that they're feeling a bit addicted and they even acknowledge that. It's pretty impressive.
And they know that it doesn't feel good to be checking compulsively.
Right.
And sometimes they do it to protect themselves or each other. The other day, one of the older kids came and said, "Oh, there's a big bat mitzvah that Molly wasn't invited to on Saturday, and I think she's just going to be watching the whole day to see what gets posted and everything." I think that would be a good day, Mom, for us to have a technology-free weekend, because at least she'll miss the whole Snapchat, the whole whatever.
So and look at that. That's compassion, which is linked with happiness. How's that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they can do it. They protect themselves and they protect each other pretty strategically from this stuff. But that's only because we've had 10,000 fights about it. I'm telling you about that, the good outcome, because that's the light at the end of the tunnel. But like, it's a lot of work, but I think that this is the most important arena for us to hold the boundaries on for our kids.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And, before we take a break, I'll just start the topic and we'll come back and continue it about busyness, that busyness in kids, in adults, in everyone is not correlated with happiness. Is that right?
It is not. It's not even correlated with productivity, which we think it is. I mean, we think it is. We talk about busyness being a sign of significance or importance. It's like it's a humble brag, right? How are you doing? Oh, I'm so busy, crazy, crazy busy. And what we really mean is I'm very busy and important, right?
That's a subtext.
But but I mean, when you look at research, it tells us what we know intuitively. The people who are most busy and most overwhelmed are not necessary. It doesn't correlate at all with productivity. And when we say that we're really busy, what we really mean is I'm kind of not very happy, right? Like I'm sacrificing my own needs for rest, for play, for whatever it is I really want to be doing, for the needs of my children, for my workplace, for whatever it is. But, if I left to my own devices, I wouldn't be running around like this, all, overwhelmed.
So a little bit of the martyr trap, that's one of the traps that comes up in my book, but it's a little bit like, you're right. And we were just having this thought, my partner and I in the Empowered Woman business, that this idea of I'm so busy, it's a little bit like, look at what a martyr I am, how self-sacrificing I am. Putting myself aside, it's definitely a very big trap that people fall into. And you're right. I've never met a happy martyr in my life. I always say that they usually look pretty miserable. And when I walk around so busy, you're right. It's not a happy stance.
And it's important to notice in ourselves, like when we start feeling busy and overwhelmed and telling people about it, and when we don't, but actually aren't just like laying around all day, right? So I could have a day in which, I read an entire book and I go for a hike with the dog and I cook a great meal and I'm technically busy in the sense that I'm doing something that I want to do. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to say, oh, I'm so busy and overwhelmed. I'm going to be like, I had the most luxurious day, right? I'm so happy, right? So that there's a really big difference.
Really great example. We'll be right back with Straight Talk with Sandra Reich and Dr. Christine Carter.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Change your life forever with the latest cutting-edge products for home study treatment for anxiety, featuring the clinical director of the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression and host of Straight Talk, Sandra Reich. Sandra is joined by top therapist Georgia Dow in this revolutionary anxiety videos therapy series. Thousands of people have benefited from this scientifically proven treatment approach. Isn't it time you chose yourself? Visit anxiety-videos.com right now. That's anxiety-videos.com and change your life forever.
Spa Munari is a full-service wellness day spa located at the heart of West Island, Quebec. Submerge yourself in beauty with one of our many treatments, specially catered to your needs. We offer facials, manicures, pedicures, hair removal, massages, body treatments, and so much more. Enjoy our ultimate relaxation experience with our spa packages. We offer a men's menu as well. Call us today to book your next appointment at 514-695-5040 or visit us on the web at spamunari.com. That's 514-695-5040 or spamunari.com.
Join the therapist who is affectionately known as the Couple Whisperer, Sandra Reich, on her famous couple retreats and change your life forever. Sandra offers couple retreats in beautiful locations several times a year that can radically change your love life. Couples describe her retreats as life-changing. Regain that loving feeling, bring your intimacy to a new level, and rediscover excitement and joy. Find out more at helpforanxietydepression.com or call 514-796-4357. We all want love and safety. Now you can have it. Call 514-796-4357 or helpforanxietydepression.com.
Your life, your health, your network. This is Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. To connect with the program today, please call 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email to info@helpforanxietydepression.com. Now, back to Straight Talk. Here's Sandra Reish.
Happy Sandra Reish talking to my friend and colleague, Dr. Christine Carter, author of The Sweet Spot and Raising Happiness. Dr. Carter, what are you up to these days? I'm curious. We haven't spoken in a while. I understand you're launching something.
Yes, I have just gone live with a new online class that it's called The Science of Finding Flow. And it relates to what we were talking about busyness, because oftentimes people think of the opposite of busyness as being boredom. And it's not. The opposite of busyness is that wonderful state when time seems to stand still. It's flow, right? It's being able to drop into the zone and do your most important work. It's not necessarily a class just for people who are working in an office or anything like that. It's more like the concept of like one real source of happiness for us is this sense of flow, of being in this place where you have both strength but also ease, right? That's key to my concept of the sweet spot. And so I do a lot of coaching on this with a lot of people, and I give a lot of talks, but I thought, okay, wouldn't it be great if I could teach people this from all over the world in a class?
So how people take this class? I mean, I might be your first student, quite frankly. How do people take this class? Well, I understand these concepts. Like, I've read your book and I teach it myself, and I still find you on the break we were talking about, like I say, I'm a recovering caretaker. You're talking about being a recovering type A personality. It's so easy to slip back into. I'm wondering about how you. Well, first of all, I want to know how people take the class, but then I want to know also from you, how do you immunize yourself from not falling back into type A tendencies? Okay, so you take the class by going to ChristineCarter.com. It's like right up at the top. It says The Science of Finding Flow. Or you could go right to courses.ChristineCarter.com. And it's an online course.
It's an online course. It's completely self-paced. There is a lot of interaction with me. Like, if you post a question, I will answer it. And there are live coaching calls, group coaching calls that go with it. There are 100 or so people in it right now, and it's just been so fun. I worked really hard on it, and I feel like it's my best work, right? Because it is so practice oriented, right? It's one thing to read a book, and I loved writing The Sweet Spot, and you get a copy of The Sweet Spot when you sign up for the books.
Oh, nice.
Sign up for the course.
Nice. People, you need to do that.
Yeah. But it's not the same. I feel like books provide inspiration and ideas for practices, but that we can really change our habits in our lives much more easily when we do it in a group with people with specific practices, right? Where we are held accountable and are able to just do it, because all of these things are skills like anything else. And somebody like you, and I imagine all of your clients and most of your listeners are going to be really interested in personal growth,
yes,
right? And in the kinds of things that they can do to continue to become happier and happier. And for me, it was, the sort of recovering type A personality piece of it was like perfectionism and overachieving.
Yep.
I was always about working so I could outwork anyone, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I worked harder than everyone. And this is a class about knowing what it means to work smarter, which involves a fair amount of rest, right? Yeah. And being able to do your best work, but not sacrifice your happiness or your well-being.
Yeah. So is it a strategy-based program? Like, there's strategies to not fall back into those kinds of habits?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Yes, it is. Okay. It's very tactical. There are 9 different units, and each unit takes you through a different series of strategies, just one at a time. And the goal is to really change both your mindset, the way that what you see as true, right? My PhD is in sociology. It's not psychology. And so the whole class is about sort of like culturally, this is why we tend to believe what we do. And this is how it affects our behavior.
Right.
So I'm going to work on you a little bit in terms of like, I want you to be able to see that busyness is not a sign of productivity. It is not a sign of importance or significance, right? Here's what is. Here are things that are signs of, success or fulfilling your potential or just productivity, right? And then here's how to sort of dial it back. These are we were talking over the break a little bit about why we keep ourselves so busy. And there's a whole unit in this class about numbing behaviors that we have, right? We're so stimulated, just like the kids we were talking about. We're so stimulated all the time that we feel very, very uncomfortable. We either feel anxious or guilty or bored when we're not doing something. And so it's, like, how do we deal with those feelings, right? If we're going to stop being so busy, we have to replace that with something that is ultimately more fulfilling, more meaningful, brings more joy into our lives, and is more effective.
I think it's so important. And, I told you this last time you were on, is that strategy-based, your PhD is in sociology, but I said this very cognitive behavioral, which is, in psychology, a very strategy-based, empirically tested therapy that works. And I really recommend for my clients listening that you go on ChristineCarter.com. Is that right? The website?
Yep.
Check out this program, because I think it's important. And I think that it runs very deep, because I'm the daughter of immigrants, and many, like, I live in Montreal, so this is a city that's filled with children of immigrants. And the work ethic of my parents was that if you're not working, you do need to feel guilty. So it's a really easy, slippery slope for many people to fall back into, is that is the emotion that comes up. I should get more done in the day. It's filled with those kinds of should statements. So I share with my clients that, because many people use lots of different ways to numb themselves. And being overly busy is just as much of an addiction as any other kind of addiction. There's no question. It is numbing. I couldn't agree with you more, but it's difficult when you've been raised that way to fight. And I think your course would be so helpful to fight those feelings of guilt, or, as you said, boredom that come up, to not feel like you should be doing more.
I mean, it's a really interesting addiction. Sociologically speaking, it's fascinating, right? Because it's one of the only things that doesn't carry with it a negative stigma, right? In fact, it's positive.
That's right.
Be addicted to doing stuff all the time. Like, it's fine if you can't wait in the grocery store line without checking your phone. It might be making you incredibly miserable and tense and anxious, but you're very busy and important. You're going to get that sort of feelings that you matter. From that.
Yeah. So if you're an alcoholic, that's socially not acceptable. You're numbing yourself to not feel pain. But if you're constantly busy, you're doing the exact same thing. And I say this even as a busy person, not very proudly, but I am aware when I fall back into it. And it's something that I always have to come back to the balance, which is why I think strategies are so important. And I love that your program has those strategies, because I think that's the only way to not slip back into this. I have another question. I was, watching the PBS special that you were on compassion. And first of all, let's start with if compassion is correlated with happiness. And I believe it is.
Yes, it is. It is. It's considered a positive emotion. So I have to reveal to you that I don't know which PBS special, and I can never remember. Like, I don't ever get to see these things.
You're too
famous. So I don't. You have to give me some good prompts. But here's what I'll say about compassion off the bat. It's a positive emotion, right? So it's, but we don't think of it necessarily that way. I mean, compassion's become a more popular emotion or a thing to try and teach our kids or whatever. But typically, so here's what compassion is. It's acknowledging somebody else's suffering and eliciting the feeling, like the desire to help, right? And so because it's acknowledging somebody else's suffering, we tend to shield our children from it, right? We don't really want you to feel the suffering of the homeless person or notice that or whatever. Like, it involves pain, and we shield ourselves from pain. We shield our children from pain. But in so doing, once again, we're shielding ourselves from happiness when we do that, because in the body, it's one of the most powerful positive emotions that we have. It's like love. Right? It is, in fact, it's so much like love. It's pretty much the same thing to the body, right? So how ironic is that acknowledging pain, that like something that involves pain is one of the healthiest things that we can do for physiologically, for our mental and physical health.
Well, okay. But first of all, I was referring to the PBS special "Can Money Buy Happiness?" So I'm going to the next level of this, which the study was very interesting because it actually showed that economic status and compassion, people who are doing better, their kids and themselves have less compassion. So I was going to ask you, which you've started to answer, which is, I think, I want to know the answer, and I think everybody's going to want to know the answer, is how do we teach our kids compassion? And according to this special, if we're in, upper middle class, middle class, upper middle class, or, whatever, we're less likely to feel compassion because according to the TV show that I was watching, which was really interesting, by the way, again, it's called Can Money Buy Happiness with Dr. Carter in it. We sort of don't notice when people are suffering around us when we have economic freedom.
Right.
And that worried me because, obviously my kids are living a pretty nice life and I do worry about their ability to feel compassion. So what are your tips on that?
Yeah, it is so interesting. And what I will say is Dacher Keltner has done a lot of the research on this, and he has a book that just launched called The Power Paradox, which kind of goes into all that research if your listeners are interested in it. It's just fascinating. So the first step in teaching kids to be compassionate is to really put them in touch with other people's suffering, right? This is the big thing that we don't necessarily do, right? So, we do stuff as a family with the St. Vincent de Paul's, which is the homeless center near us. I mean, they provide meals to the homeless, lots of homeless, every single day, 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. Our family we will go down there and we do things like make cupcakes for the homeless children who are having birthdays, right? And my kids will go and deliver the cupcakes. Originally they were like, no, we can't really let your kids in here. And I'm like, well, then we're not doing it, right? You cannot imagine how much compassion a child naturally feels when given the opportunity to hand a cupcake to a homeless child. It will shake them for days, right? We do it all the time, but they will still be talking about it 72 hours later because they can feel their own privilege and their own incredible desire to help, which is compassion.
So actually, you recommend then that our kids are exposed to people less fortunate and helping people less fortunate in order to foster those feelings of compassion, which again, to make this a nice package, is linked with happiness.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You're amazing, first of all, and I love talking to you. The time flies. You have also a program called 90 Days to a New Habit. Do you still have that program on your site?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a free program, I believe.
It is a free program. We're in the process today of moving it into the courses page. So if you go to courses.christinecarter.com, that's a free thing if you have a new habit that you want to get into. And it comes with this the support of thousands of people on this Facebook page that are all trying to get into new habits. And a lot of them there's a lot of coaching each other that goes on. So that's a really nice one to sign up for if you know that you want to get into the habit of exercising or meditating or doing something new. It's just an email-based program, but there's a lot of people who will support you in that.
Awesome. So people can find these programs on christinecarter.com. How else can people get in touch with you, Dr. Carter?
I am on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. I have to say I'm not very good about checking social media. So the best way, if you want to interact with me, is to leave a comment on my website. I do see all of those and reply to all of them.
Okay, you're fine. We have 1 minute left. Your final tips. If someone tomorrow wants to increase happiness in their life, what should they do?
Stop pretending. Be true to yourself, right? Anytime I'm also a recovering people pleaser. And anytime we try and do something to impress somebody else, social media made me think of this. It's basically a lie, and a lie is a very stressful state for the human body. That's why lie detectors work. So just be true to yourself.
Love it. Dr. Carter, I can't thank you enough. Hopefully we'll have you back, and we'll definitely be checking out your program. I might be the first in line. To everybody listening, let's all make sure we make time to be true to ourselves, to take that time to think of others, and so on and so forth. And of course, keep your eyes on the stars. This is Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. We hope you've enjoyed today's show, and we'll tune in again next Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Health and Wellness Channel. Now, go live your best life.